I'm Pasquale Tartaro, joined by my good friend Mitchell Broder. We have a lot of good content for you guys today, and we're going to start with college football, the big talk of the day. Power Five leaders are discussing postponing the season amid the coronavirus concerns. There was a lot of confusion. There's some conflicting reports today. Mitch, make me less confused. What's going on, and what are your thoughts on the possibility of college football this fall?
So for those who maybe haven't been on Twitter too much in the sports world, so basically, it was originally reported, I think, by Dan Patrick, that there was a 12-2 vote in the Big Ten from the I believe presidents of the universities in favor of canceling all fall sports. But I guess they didn't vote yet, so that was not an accurate report. But long story short, the whole situation is just it's very unfortunate and it's kind of a joke, to be honest. I understand that there is a lot of moving pieces when it comes to not just college football, but all of college athletics. There's so many student athletes to look out for. There's a lot. It's a big operation with a lot of people involved, and versus a professional team where there's only so many players and coaches and staff. I mean, for some of these football teams, they got over 100 players on the roster. So I understand that the difficulty of having a college football season, but in the end of the day, these conferences have had months to prepare a season, and it seems like they really didn't do anything. And I do blame this, to be honest, on the NCAA as a whole, because there has been absolutely no leadership at all during this entire situation, right? The NFL, when they were planning, how can we do a season without a bubble, all right? They put together a task force, and they came up with a plan, protocols that have to be followed by the teams, all this, all these safety measures that got sent out to all these teams. And it was clear this is what you got to do in order to be able to play football this season. And the NCAA just basically put it all on the commissioners and the universities and these programs to figure that out. And it's just ridiculous if you ask me, because what we have is exactly, what you would expect when you do that. Just confusion. Nobody's on the same page. Nobody knows what's going on. None of the players seem to know what's going on. I
I have
mean, it's just
no idea
it's an absolute disaster, and it's pretty ridiculous. And on top of it, like, these players, listen, they want to play. They want to be safe, but they want to play. And a lot of people are making fair points, man. I mean, if all these schools are going to have thousands and thousands of kids back on their campuses taking courses, you know, how can they do that and then yet, not even attempt to put something together for college athletics? And I think that with the Big Ten in particular, what was so stupid was that, when they got rid of the non-conference games, right? Usually those are the first 3-4 games of the season, and by the time the conference play picks up, it's, the end of September.
Yeah.
Why are they starting the season like the first weekend of September when universities, some schools are just going to be starting classes that week? You
Yeah.
might as well wait, see how things are going, because, things that you got to see what life is back at these universities at campus, if the virus is out of control or not. You just got to know. And I just think that, so it's in particular with the Big Ten, so many steps were just messed up in this process. And I think so many things weren't carefully thought through, until now. And it's like, it feels like for example, I saw like the Big 12 apparently is going to start, it has a meeting with some medical experts. It's like, why didn't they do that 2 months ago? What are they doing it, now in the middle of August? I mean, they're supposed to be
Like
playing
me,
games in a month.
you and I are ready to go back to school next week.
Exactly. So I just think the fact that there wasn't a set in stone guidelines. Here, the NCAA, this is what the conferences have to do. Either you comply to these rules or you don't play. Plain and simple. The fact that they didn't do that is, I think, the biggest reason, outside of the fact that, like, you know, obviously, coronavirus has hit our nation quite hard. It's been publicized. A lot of people not, taking the procedures. Obviously, I think that's probably the main reason why we're, in this position. But ultimately, if you want to look at it from just within college athletics, the fact that the NCAA, just didn't take it upon themselves to set forth guidelines to how you can play sports is the is arguably the biggest reason why we're here in this position.
Yeah. I guess to start, I do agree with you with the whole procedures thing. Obviously, it's hard for me to sit here and sort of blame the NCAA for maybe taking the safe, or I guess you could say easy route by canceling, or I guess looking to cancel um, football this fall. However, I don't think it's that simple. I think there's other factors here besides obviously canceling just because of a pandemic. But Trevor Lawrence brought up a great point on Twitter, I think yesterday. He said that being able to play this fall, players will be incentivized to actually follow those guidelines, and because they all want a season, so it would seem as if they would all follow the guidelines, and it would be safer than them just staying home where people are not following guidelines. At least they're quarantined together on campus. But I think it also boggles down to obviously liability if a player was to get the virus and potentially be harmed by the virus. Obviously, that is not good for the NCAA. There's always that chance, regardless of what the statistics say, there's always that chance. So there is liability. And also, I think one thing that not a lot of people are talking about is player unionization, like the possibility of players actually coming together. And because we're seeing it on Twitter right now, all schools, players, coaches coming together and saying we want to play. And I think the idea of all of these players sort of forming a sort of coalition, if you will, sort of scares the NCAA, because maybe not now, but if that were to happen a couple years down the line, and we may see players asking for money, which is sort of long overdue at this point. So I think the idea of players sort of coming together and asking for this season and sort of asserting their power is sort of scary in the minds of the NCAA.
I think that's definitely if anything, that's the biggest positive I think that's come out of this.
Yeah.
Is that the players kind of realize that they do have a little bit of power. It's not
Yeah,
much, but
they're the ones that
they're
bring in the revenue, man.
right, but their voices are important.
Yeah,
Um, and ultimately, I even think by these players opting out has even caused, has helped in that case. I mean, listen, there's no question, and I think that which is why I think having the season start at a later date could help out in the situation where obviously what happens if students get sent home? Do these players play a season? Because then at that point, are they even really student athletes at this point? Should you be paying them if you've sent everybody home except them? So there's so many factors, as you said, when it comes into this. But like I said, I just think that when you're doing when you're in such a weird position like this, right? Trying to somehow play sports in the middle of a global pandemic, right? It's such a tough task. I just think that the fact that the NCAA couldn't just kind of guide conferences and programs and universities in the same direction kind of together, because they could have. I mean, they have the power to do that ultimately. The fact that they kind of didn't, I still ultimately think is biting them in the ass as we sit here on August 10th. At the end of the day, like I said, when you just allow everyone to go do their own thing, I mean, ultimately, you got programs where, for example, it seems like Penn State actually did a pretty good job with their ball players this summer. I
Yeah,
believe there weren't very many positive cases. The guys were
just
really doing a good job. But then, you know, you got like Rutgers, right? Where a bunch of guys went out and partied, half the team got it. And like at Colorado State, where coaches were threatening players, that if they reported symptoms, they would lose playing time, you know? And so it's just a mess. And when you don't set the message for every program, every coach, every school, every conference that this is what you need to do, and if you don't, you're not playing, you just get this whole, mumbo jumbo of just, they're doing that, they're doing that. It just there's no connectiveness. So and ultimately at the end of the day, I feel bad for these players, especially for some of these guys that needed the season to maybe get drafted just
yeah.
to get
Like
their
Joe
name
Burrow
out there.
said, he didn't have last season. He's
Right,
not
right,
going number one. He's not going first round if he
right.
didn't
Joe
have last
Burrow. I
season.
mean, Joe Burrow after that, his 2018 season, people were saying was like a day 3 pick.
Yeah, exactly.
And the money he made himself, right? And just these other guys that just maybe, they were just kind of waiting for their opportunity to show that they can play or something. So those are the guys I feel awful for, of course. Um, so I mean, we'll see. I'll say this, Pat. What would be your thoughts on a spring season?
Absolutely not. I am totally out on the spring season. It doesn't make much sense to me for a couple reasons. I guess the first is that, I mean, if you have a spring season, I heard Joe Klatt come on Coward's show today. He brought up a very good point. He said he thinks that a spring season could potentially be more detrimental to the health of the players than playing this fall, just simply because these players aren't used to playing 2 seasons sort of like in that like that close of a proximity. They usually have a year off. If you're asking them to play 8 games in a full contact sport, running into a wall almost every single play, the chances of them getting injured that following fall are significantly increased. And besides that, if there was a spring season, I don't think the top names in college football would play either. I don't think Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or, I mean, maybe some of them would, but the draft is right around the corner. Why would you risk getting hurt for a sort of new season that has never been implemented before? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just my thoughts on it.
No, I'm kind of with you. I don't think it'd be possible
I
because
don't
of the
I
quick
just don't
turnaround.
see it. Yeah.
And plus, like, you know,
It would
in the
basically
north,
be glorified spring football.
right,
Glorified blue white.
and like in the Northeast and in the Midwest. I mean, let's be honest here. March is a different kind of cold and weather than
Yeah.
like late November. I mean, that's to ask players to go play in that,
Then hitting that.
hitting that all, and have that be the weather all year. I understand that these players, they like the cold, they like this, but I mean, that's also another factor in it. I kind of think spring college football is just kind of, pointless, as you said, because I don't know how these players can turn around and have a normal off season.
Yeah. No.
Um, so I mean, we'll see how it all shakes out, but I just think that it's definitely it was one of these things where I feel like I have been preparing myself for no college football this fall, because I've been saying for like a month or so now that I just think it's just so tough. It's so complicated, so many variables, like you said.
And
But
it's hard to put your trust in the NCAA when there's no figurehead who has proven himself as responsible and a good leader.
exactly.
So
So
that's just the end of it. But
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day,
I
do you think any Division One power, FBS football happens this season at all? Because I know some conferences are pushing to play, but do you think ultimately any of these conferences play any games?
I'm not going to count the SEC out. They love their football down there, man. Not counting them out. I have a buddy that goes to Alabama. He tells me all about it. They really, and it seems from what I've read that the SEC has been the one conference, or I guess I suppose with the Big 12 as well. But the SEC, I think, would be the one conference to continue, just simply because of how big a deal football is down there and how much, like, obviously the conference is able to bring in revenue.
I think that um I think that Pac-12, out of all the Power 5 conferences, to me, the Pac-12 seems like the most likely to not have football, I
Yeah,
think,
I
because
agree.
this has been swirling for them for like a couple weeks now. And I know a lot of players in the Pac-12, all signed that like coalition together. So I think that the SEC and the Big 12, I think they're going to try the hardest for sure. But, at the same time, like, what makes me wonder and makes me think that that there will be no college football at all is that ultimately, if one school messes up, right, and so many players get the virus, and that team now is like can't play basically. Like, I feel like it's one of those situations where that one domino falls, it all kind of comes down together.
Hmm.
So we'll see, but it's like I said, it's unfortunate because I mean, listen, I want to see college football. You want to see college football. A lot of people want to see college football, but it just seems like for whatever reason, and especially compared to the NFL, just such a long shot for it to happen at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I guess we could switch over from seemingly no leadership to great leadership. The NBA and Adam Silver
Yes.
um, has been on fire lately. The bubble has been a huge success. We've seen TJ Warren turn into prime Michael Jordan throughout the bubble. We've seen the Suns catch fire and win. I think they won their fifth straight game today. They're undefeated in the bubble. And we've seen teams like the Blazers and Damian Lillard beefing with Paul George. And it's just really crazy right now. My question to you is the NBA did implement a playing game for the 8-9 seeds, if close enough, and now it has been confirmed that there will be a playing game in the Western Conference. My question to you is who is your favorite to sort of claim that 8 spot in the playing game and reach the playoffs and face the Lakers in the first round?
I think you got to go with Portland right now. I mean, they I mean, they've been one of the better teams in the bubble. I mean, they almost took down the Clippers, and they frankly should have, taken down the Clippers. And ultimately, I mean, when you look at these teams who are all in the hunt, all on the outside looking in, um, Portland's without a question the most talented team in that group. And so, especially now with Jaren Jackson done for the season with his the meniscus injury, I think that the Grizzlies are all but done pretty much, even though they still have, I believe, a half game lead. I mean, I think that as great as a rookie season as he's had, I think that the bubble, the lights have been a little too bright for the Grizzlies a little bit and a little bit for Ja. I've thought a couple games I watched Memphis play, it just seemed like that Ja wasn't quite ready to play when it's like do or die basketball, and he's going against the best, and like I still think he's rookie of the year at the end of the day. Um,
I
but
agree
I
with you
think
there.
I think Portland though for sure is that team that's going to get that 8 spot. And for the Lakers, I mean that's the last team you want to be playing is that 8 seed right now because Portland now I don't think they can take the Lakers in a series. I just think that the Lakers are too talented, too good. But I mean Portland could definitely take that game to like 6 or 7 even maybe. I mean they're if Dame's feeling it, you know, and he
And
gets
all bets
just
are off, really.
right, and he can just get 2 other guys to, play at a high level, whether it's McCollum, Melo, you
Gary
know,
Trent has been
Gary
stepping
Trent off
up.
the bench, one of their 3 big guys, with Whiteside, Collins, or Nurkic. I mean, if they can get a couple of those guys playing well and Dame's, doing his thing, I mean, they're a tough team to beat. I mean,
Absolutely.
they went.
They
I
were the
mean, they
three seed last year.
exactly. So I think that they're definitely that team that's going to get that 8 seed.
Yeah, if you asked me during the regular season, Memphis was my pick to hold on to that 8 seed. But yeah, the bubble, once I heard that they were implementing this bubble thing, I literally thought to myself, I was talking to one of my friends about it. I was like, oh boy, like Damian Lillard might go crazy now. Just because, like, the bubble, I feel like, sort of turns basketball into a different game. It's very, very prideful because there's no crowd. You're getting your pride from your just from playing and just from your bench. And It's very street ball-ish at times. There's a lot of breakdowns, and it turns into sort of one-on-one basketball at some points. And Damian Lillard, man, I don't know why the Clippers would do that. They got him going. He scored 50 points the next game after Patrick Beverly and Paul George were talking to him. But
Right.
yeah, the loss of Jaren Jackson Jr. for Memphis, I think, is too big for them to overcome simply because he's not a rookie. So he's been able to take some pressure off of Ja Morant's shoulders in the scoring department at least, and on defense as well. I watched the Grizzlies a couple times, and I agree with you. I think they had a great season, but I think they're going to come up just a little short simply because they're young. But I do
Yep.
expect them to be back, and I 100% expect Ja Morant to tear it up in the years coming in the playoffs just because it's his first year and he didn't play that well. I mean, heck, it was Zion's first year and the Pelicans are already eliminated, but I expect both of them to be great next year. But yeah, I got to go with the Trailblazers here. As much as I want the Suns to take the 8 seed, just because I love Devin Booker, I feel for him. I really want him to make the playoffs one time. I don't know, man. I'm not betting against Damian Lillard right now. It's a scary dude you're going up against. Plus, they have CJ McCollum, and I really like Terry Stotts as a coach as well, too.
Right. With the Suns, I mean, listen, like they've been a great story, and I think Booker during this bubble has kind of proved to
Yeah,
the nation he's kind of a guy that I feel like doesn't get a lot of love.
absolutely.
Um, that he's legit. Like he's
Yeah.
as good as anyone in the league right now. And DeAndre Ayton started to play a lot better. I thought in the bubble he's been real good for them. I mean, listen, I think that the Suns just kind of were just too deep in a hole to dig themselves out of to get in the playoffs. I think they were just it was a little too much for them. But they showed some growth in this bubble
Yeah.
that's a team
If
that
you're a Suns fan, you got to be
they're
encouraged.
they're a piece or two away from being like legit. I think from really content for the playoffs and being right there with that with that pack of teams out in the West. Um, but I think I think they're just a little too far back, but they've been a great story nonetheless. Um, but ultimately, yeah, like you said, Pelicans now out, um, which I think kind of cements, Zion as shouldn't be player or rookie of the year this season.
Yeah.
Also, what was up with him not playing like a lot of minutes here in the bubble? I mean, I understand he's been coming off some injuries, but I mean, man, when there's season on the line, I mean, when he comes in, I thought that when he's played, he has all but lived up to the hype. I mean, honestly, he comes out there and he's been averaging like a point a minute. I mean, you know,
It it doesn't really. I don't. The situation is tricky because obviously you want to be cautious with him. He's a heavy dude and he's jumping up almost every play. So all that weight's coming down his joints. Like you want to be careful. But at the end of the day, if the dude's healthy to play, like play him.
right? And
like
you're playing for your
like
season,
minute restrictions. I remember there was one game. I couldn't remember who they were playing, but there was one game where he reached his limit. I think it was like 20 minutes or something. And the Pelicans were down like 2 points with like a minute 30 to go. And they subbed him out. You're
right?
acting like that 1 minute 30 is gonna make a big difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like and you could see it's frustrated. It frustrated him as like him at least like a little. Like you could tell.
yeah. I mean, he's a competitor. He wants to
Yeah,
play.
he
It kind of
wants to be
reminds
out
me
there.
of from the Last Dance. When
Yeah,
they had
when
Michael
MJ, yeah,
Jordan on that. And ultimately it's like, man, I mean, yes, you want to protect your young superstar who's the future of your team, future of the league, but
if
man,
the
I mean,
dude's healthy.
when your season's on the line and he's outside of maybe Brandon Ingram, I mean, I think he's the best player on that team.
Yeah, I'd
You
say
know,
I'd say Ingram and Drew Holiday as well, all three.
right? He's top three player on your team,
Yeah,
especially when you got Lonzo Ball
yeah,
playing the way he's been playing, which I mean, he's been atrocious.
yeah.
Here in the bubble, I mean, I just think that I just didn't get what Alvin Gentry was doing by limiting his minutes so strictly, because I mean now they're done. Their season's over. I mean, they
And
were a long shot to make it anyways, but I mean, it feels like they didn't even like put up a fight in a way, with how limited they were using him.
and it may be a little premature for me to say this, but the Pelicans need to be careful. Not right now. I think they're fine right now, but they need to be careful with the way that they sort of assert their authority over Zion's playing decision. You know what I mean? Like I feel like you want to frustrate him. You want to be able to keep this guy within your organization for the next 10, 15 years, hopefully.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, you want to frustrate him. I get you're trying to protect him, but it is what it is, I suppose.
Right. Right. And then I think it's also interesting how the East has honestly been shaken up too. To be honest, man, right now I think Boston's got to be the favorite to win the East.
Awesome. What
Go
about
in,
Milwaukee?
Milwaukee. I don't think they've been that. They haven't looked amazing in this bubble. And the problem that has been the case with Milwaukee the last 2 years in the playoffs has been, listen, obviously Giannis is unbelievable, but when your number two options, Chris Middleton, it just isn't good enough. I just don't think they have enough star power around Giannis to get it done. You know, and the
Yeah.
same kind of goes with Toronto. I like Toronto. I really like Siakam. I think that Van Vliet's
Super well coached.
they're
Super
so
well.
well coached.
Nick
It's a
Nurse, great.
balanced team. I still think I take them over Milwaukee in a series, to be honest.
Really?
I think
I
so,
like,
yeah. Toronto's been playing pretty solid basketball. Other than that game against Boston where they got blown out, I thought they played pretty well. I just think with Milwaukee, man, it's just the same story every year with them. It's just they're the best team in the East. Giannis is unbelievable. Get to the playoffs, and it's just they just don't quite have it. But at the end of the day, I think Boston with Brad Stevens at the helm and how talented they are. Because to me, Boston's been this team for like the last couple of years. You're like
yeah.
waiting for them to like finally get over that ledge and get into the finals. And I think this is finally the year for them because I like the way their roster's built, especially with Kemba coming back now. I think this is their year.
Yeah, the Celtics certainly have a lot of depth. I mean, when you got Jason Tatum and uh, Jaylen Brown as your wings, and then you have Gordon Hayward coming off the bench, like it's
Right.
not bad
Smart,
at all. They got
smart
Kemba
Marcus
Walker,
Smart come,
Smart,
off the bench
Smart.
too. They got players.
Yeah, Enos Cantor. Yeah, they've got a squad. However, I'm not particularly ready to give up on the Bucks just yet. Just simply because I feel like they are semi different from last year. Just solely because now they have that experience. And Chris Middleton, I haven't been the biggest believer in him either, I will admit, but he has been playing well in the bubble this far. And Giannis has been very dominant. I will say though, I honestly think that the Bucks do not want to see the Heat in the second round because the Heat, I think, match up really well with the Bucks. I think they have a couple bodies that they could throw at Giannis. Jimmy Butler, Jay Crowder, even Derek Jones Jr. He's athletic. He'll take a shot at him. And then Bam Adebayo has guarded him at times throughout the season. Has actually had some success before that last game, I'll say. But the Heat played them a couple days ago, and they took them down to the wire without Jimmy Butler. So
Right.
I think the Heat could be a potential sleeper in the East. I don't see the Raptors making the finals this year just simply because I don't know if Siakam can be that guy yet. I
Right.
think he's trending upwards in that direction. Same with, as I was saying with John Morant before. But I don't know if he's there yet. He did drop 30 points in an NBA Finals Game 6 closeout game.
Right.
But I don't know. No Kawhi Leonard. The Raptors looked a little timid on offense last year throughout the playoffs. I just got to wait and see. If I had to put my money on who's coming out of the East, I do like the Celtics, but I also think the Bucks. I'd say either the Bucks or the Celtics. That would be the conference finals, and we'll see from there, I
Right.
guess.
Now that Heat team, I like that you brought them up because they're definitely a little dark horse. And I mean, Spoelstra's a great coach. He's proven it. I mean, time and time, and
Yeah.
again, the guy can coach. And
They've got
I like,
shooters, they've got size, they've got depth. I think they match up really well with the Bucks.
yes. I think that's a team that I could see them making a little run and definitely causing some problems
Yeah.
in the playoffs. But yeah, so we'll see how that shakes out. But it's the bubble.
I also do want to ask you real quick. We saw Ben Simmons go out recently with a knee injury. He's out. He's out for the season, which means the Sixers are most likely out of contention, barring something spectacular happening. Sorry, just don't think it's possible at this point. They haven't been playing too well in the bubble. There have been executives around the league that have been speculating about potentially splitting up the two because they don't fit each other's games that well. If you were the Sixers, what would you do? And I also want you to consider Brett Brown, the head coach, because a lot of people have been calling for his firing since last year and the year before. Like, this isn't something new. If you were the Sixers heading into this offseason, would you trade Ben Simmons? Would you trade Joel Embiid? Or would you fire Brett Brown, or two out of the three?
I think that I'm definitely keeping Embiid, although he's got injury concerns. Um, I think Embiid's game though is like more. It
Pollard.
just fits with the trends for today's NBA. I mean, ultimately, he's a big guy, can shoot. He's a good defender. I mean, ultimately, to me, Embiid, he's kind of the face of that team. I feel like he's the face of that franchise. Ben Simmons has been this guy who, everyone's always like, oh, he can just, shoot 3-pointers and make them. I mean, he'll be a superstar, but eventually I feel like he just got to kind of just come to terms with he is what he is. And his game, I think 10 years ago would have been so fine in the NBA, but the fact that he's a perimeter player who cannot shoot from the perimeter is a problem. And at the end of the day, they have had this this team together for several seasons now, and it just hasn't materialized in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And eventually you just gotta try something different. You gotta just flip the it's kind of like, I feel like with the Rockets, right? Where eventually they just said, hey man, like, we haven't gotten to where we want to go. I think it's time we part ways with Chris Paul, try to bring in something a little different, and I think that is what the Sixers got to do at this point. I think is change things up. Whether Brett Brown gets fired as well, I mean, I think that's not unreasonable to think, but something's got to give. I think because this team, it's been the same story with them every year.
Yeah.
This is the year they're going to do it. They have a okay season. They're seeded between 4 to 6, and they maybe win a series.
Yeah.
So I think that they got to do something this offseason, I think.
For me, I think it's time to move on for Brett Brown personally. I just think that they've been stuck, and I gotta see before I trade either piece personally. I gotta see what they could do under a different head coach first, and just sort of evaluate that. And maybe halfway through the season, I'll trade one of them, depending on the offers. But you might think I'm crazy right here, and I can't believe I'm saying this right now. But if I were to trade one of them, I think I would trade Joel Embiid. And
Really?
it's not because I think that he is a worse player than Ben Simmons, because Joel Embiid, when healthy, is a top 10 player in the league, most likely, you're going to say. Maybe just outside of that top 10. Ben Simmons is not that. However, I think Ben Simmons is able to do a lot of good things on a basketball court, because aside from shooting, the guy's a great passer. He's great in transition. He's a great rebounder. And he's a really good defender. He's going to make an
Right.
all-defensive team this year. It's hard for me to sort of choose Embiid, who is better, over Ben Simmons, who is younger and has proven to be slightly more durable. I know he just got injured with his knee, but Embiid has some real concerns in the past couple of years in terms of injuries. Just also the way the game is going too. Joel Embiid is a very good back to the basket player, but I don't think the way this league is going, you can commit to having that guy as your main guy or your only sorts of offense, because the game's speeding up and we're shooting a lot of threes now. So I think if the Sixers were maybe sort of able to trade Joel Embiid and maybe bring in a guy like Bradley Beal or like a shooter and just surround him with shooters, I think he would really thrive in that system, because we've seen a guy like Russell Westbrook who hasn't shot well the past 2 years, just shooting mid-range, is not really shooting well from the three-point line. He's been able to thrive in Houston's system because there's been shooters all around him opening up the basket for driving lanes. And I think if you were to do that with Ben Simmons, maybe play him at the 4 and the 5 more, I meant to say, sorry, small ball 5, and have him run things up there and surround him with shooters, I think they honestly might be better off in the long term. I'm not sure. Listen, like you said, you can't keep expecting him to develop a jump shot. And honestly, it's very frustrating. I have criticized Ben Simmons in the past for not not shooting. It's not even more so him not being able to shoot a jump shot. It's the fact that he's not taking them a lot for me. I want to see that aggressiveness because Giannis can't shoot that well, but he still takes a lot of them. So
Right.
for me, it's more about that. But with that being said, if I'm the Sixers, I'm firing Brett Brown, maybe hiring someone like Mark Jackson, just spark the fire in the players and see what they got. And if nothing materializes then I think I'm trading Joel Embiid, which is I really didn't think I would be saying that today, a couple months ago, but here I am.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. I guess we'll move on to the
Right.
NFL and opt-outs. I know your guy Trey White was sort of contemplating about whether he should opt out or not. We've seen other guys like C.J. Mosley and for a second Matthew Stafford, but he's back. He's going to play this season. He was on the COVID list temporarily, but what do you think is the significance of all of these opt-outs, and do you expect to see sort of a mid-season wave of players that would be clamoring to opt out mid-season, even though the deadline has passed?
Wait, hold on. Repeat that question again.
No, you're good. I'm just saying, what do you think is the significance of players opting out so far, the amount of players or the group that has? And do you think there's going to be any chance of players sort of speaking up and wanting to opt out once things change in the fall and the season actually starts and obviously new data is provided and seeing how things are going in terms of COVID?
So honestly, I'm surprised that none of these big name players opted out,
I
to
am
be
as
honest.
well. I really am as well.
I really thought that one or two big names would call it.
Yeah.
And we almost had one with Tre'Davious White, which didn't happen. So, the NFL predicted, I believe, about 60 players were going to opt out. And I believe the number was 68, 67, 69, something in that range.
Yeah.
So a little over what they thought. But for the NFL's sake, like I said, they were lucky that they didn't lose any of the game's brightest stars. I mean, ultimately, I think the biggest name that opted out was either Dante Hightower from the Patriots or C.J. Mosley from the Jets.
Yeah.
So I understand for any player that opted out. I mean, listen, I totally understood, and wouldn't and I respected any guy's choice. I think some of the fans that were getting all upset over players opting out is a little ridiculous because
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, like how could they be opting out? They're making millions of dollars. But listen, I mean, they got that option for, that was what was agreed upon. And some of these players, used an option that was given to them.
Yeah,
So
and you obviously can't blame them for making a personal decision like
not
that.
at all.
You
And I think
cannot blame them at all.
with some of these players, I mean, when people are calling them selfish, I think that's pretty crazy because if
Nonsense.
anything, it's the opposite. I think the selfish move is to just play to make money. I mean,
Yeah.
these guys were willing to not get paid really this season,
Mhm.
just take care of their families and loved ones and stay safe. And you got to commend that for some of these guys. So, I think with fans, calling out these guys for opting out was pretty ridiculous and
Yeah.
and kind of messed up, to be honest. But I think that as far as players opting out, say mid-season, it all comes down to how bad has it been. If these teams are managing the virus really well and taking proactive steps to prevent the spread of it, and all the players are doing what they're supposed to, because that's how baseball got in some trouble, with some of these players who ultimately went out to, clubbing
Yeah.
and whatnot. I mean, I saw today a pitcher for, I believe, the Indians,
Yeah.
um, essentially, I guess, broke like a quarantining rule and like went out. And when reports came, Indians had, they suspended him basically or
Got it.
forcing him to
You have to.
quarantine.
No
And
choice.
that is like the type of, which is good because, set the example for these other teams that have been, pretending it's not a big deal. If the NFL and if everything goes as planned, I don't believe many players will opt out. I think a couple might. But if things get a little rocky, I wouldn't be surprised to see a bunch of players just say, you know what, this just isn't worth it. I'm out of here.
Another big name that actually not opted out was from the Super Bowl champions. Damian Williams opted out. I was actually kind of surprised by that, but that makes room for your guy, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, to step into that number one role this year.
Right.
So we'll see about that. He's probably going to put up a huge fantasy year, but aside from that, sorry, well, went on a little bit of a tangent.
No, you're good.
But
You're good.
yeah, no, I mean, end of the day, these guys, they're making personal decisions. Anyone that judges or criticizes them for making a decision that is important to them because of the health of their family, I mean, listen, man, like, come on, come on now.
Right.
For the NFL, I think ultimately I agree with you. I think they won't honestly have that many more opt-outs throughout the season, maybe a few depending on how things are going. But I also think the NFL is going to do a good job this year. I really do, because they've had all this time to sort of see what other leagues have been doing, sort of take note of their mistakes, also take note of what they've been doing well, sort of create their own plan based on that. I know it took a while for them to actually converse with the players and be transparent about that plan. However, I think that this fall you'll see not many opt-outs, not enough to affect the stability of the league. I think they will be able to complete their season.
Yeah, I think they'll be able to play. I agree. I think I know there's a lot of concern now. They should change the schedule and do like kind of mini bubbles and whatnot. I look at it as, listen, if the players are responsible on their end and the teams are responsible on their end, I think that, this season could happen for
And the
sure.
NFL
And
has the money to do all of the testing necessary. If they
right.
were to just testing every day at all these locations, players are following guidelines. That's the way it's got to be done. You got to be testing every
Yes,
day, and players have to be making an active effort, because no one's going to be perfect. Guys are going to maybe get it when they were following guidelines.
exactly.
But as long as you're testing and guys are doing their best, you're going to be able to have a season, in my opinion.
No, yeah. I mean that's what it comes down to. Is everyone following the correct protocols?
Yeah.
If that happens, there will be a 16 game season this year. Um, but we'll see how fatigue sets in with some of these guys, or they start to get antsy. You know, and not to mention the biggest factor with this, I think the biggest variable that is unpredictable is going to be. I mean, listen, for some of these teams, for the Jets, the Giants, the Bills, the Patriots, right? All in areas where COVID isn't too bad right now, versus Miami, Phoenix, Dallas. It's a little different in those
Yeah.
cities.
Los Angeles as well.
Exactly, Los Angeles. So, that's going to be interesting to see, where when in places where COVID is spreading, at a pretty high rate, if they can keep that out of the building. Because, like, for example, with like Buffalo, like with the infection rate so low in this area of the country, like, I'm pretty confident that they'll be able to keep this virus out of that facility.
Yeah.
But like Jacksonville, in a city where it's not so much the case, I mean, who knows? And we'll see. And I'm also kind of curious to see if any players play the season with a facial covering underneath the helmets. Because I've seen some guys been a lot of practices. Guys been running around without with mask on, which has actually been, kind of interesting to see. So we'll see how that all goes down. But I will say this: I think out of all the divisions, I do believe the AFC East got hit the hardest with opt-outs, because I mean there were so many key players on the Patriots opting out, and obviously C.J. Mosley. I mean that contract for the Jets. I mean, listen, you can't ever predict that he was going to opt out of the season, but
Not looking too good so far.
no, he's played 2 games for them. They're paying him big money, so you know. But how about people say the Patriots are definitely taking because players are opting out? What's up with that?
Hey, who opted out for them again?
So Dante Hightower opts out.
Okay.
Pat Chung opted out. What's his face? Matt Lacoste, the tight end, opted out. Marcus Cannon, their tackle, opted out. And a couple other guys who weren't as big names, but they lost a couple starters.
Man, the Patriots are going to be looking real different this year.
Yeah, almost unrecognizable, I think, at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be weird. It's gonna be very weird. But I'm all for it. I guess. I guess we can move on to the MLB. The Houston Astros have been struggling as of late. Obviously, lately there was a fight between Joe Kelly and I forget who it was on the Astros, but the point is that the rest of the league does not like them. And although they are currently up 5-0 on the San Francisco Giants, they are sitting here with a 6-9 record thus far. I just want to know, are you enjoying this? What's your thoughts on the whole Astros early season collapse?
I just gotta say, whoever came up with the Astro Shame Tour Twitter account,
Yeah.
kudos to them, man. I love that account. I love seeing the stuff they post. Listen, with how bad the Astros have been playing, and when you look at the batting averages of Altuve, Bregman, Correa, and they're all below 200. I mean, listen, how does it not make you think, man, like, were these guys even really that good to begin with? Like, seriously, I mean, they look awful. And this is a team that's supposed to be, I mean, they won the World Series, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
I mean, these were guys that were considered the best in the league, and they just look terrible. And I think that watching this proves, first of all, Rob Manfred, how could you not penalize his team
Don't even get
so
me
much more? I mean,
started.
clearly the cheating, no question, is a huge factor why they won the World Series. I mean, we're watching it right now. They have no cheating going on right now, and they are such a below average baseball team. Now, I know that might be a little unfair to just say because they had some other members of that World Series team that's a longer part of the roster, but still, I mean, listen, the best players on that team are playing horrendously here in 2020, and I just don't think it's a coincidence. You know, I think that this proves that they were totally a fraud. They really weren't. Like I said, I don't think they were really that good. Ultimately, now that we're watching this, I mean, and honestly, good. I don't care. If anything, I applaud any MLB player that gives it a little bit to him. Whether it's Joe Kelly, like we saw yesterday, the Astros. A lot of Astro players have been hit by pitches. You know what? So if Rob Manfred isn't going to punish them, then let the rest of the Major League Baseball take care of that. As I guess you could say,
Yeah.
and just give them a little bit of their peace of mind.
Someone's got to do something, man. Like they didn't lose their title. They get fined. What do they get fined? What are the
No one got suspended.
No one got suspended. Like it just makes no sense to me, man. I'm not gonna go as far to say that that they would be this awful always if they weren't cheating. However, I do think that this is a reflection of just how fed up the MLB is
Right.
with them. Because think about it, if you're in the MLB and you're playing the Astros on Friday night, you're waking up early for that game. You're getting up that morning like hype because everyone wants a shot at them. Everyone wants to come at them, and rightfully so. They cheated, and if they're gonna get upset that other teams are giving it to them or trash talking and potentially throwing some balls, and then listen, man, you did this to yourself. You knew that what you were doing was wrong, and you knew in baseball, especially a league that has shown in the past that pitchers, at the end of the day, a pitcher is throwing a 90 mile per hour fastball at the plate. If you upset him, he has the ability to throw that at you.
Right.
So you got to really recognize that when you're doing something like cheating in the World Series. If you get caught, there's going to be some serious ramifications because of that. So I don't feel sorry for the Astros. I really don't. It blows my mind how Joe Kelly got 8 games, which is equivalent to a 23-game suspension in a regular season.
Right. Yep. Yeah,
How it's kind of laughable. It really
it is
is.
laughable, and it is even more laughable when someone pointed this out. Where you think about it, like, listen, talk all the crap you want about Roger Goodell, but the best player in that sport got caught deflating footballs a little bit under what they're supposed to be,
Mhm.
and got suspended for a quarter of the season.
Yeah.
Now,
Mhm.
you just let's put that into context, right? Roger Goodell is not the most liked commissioner.
Yeah.
And even he, when a player cheated, took it seriously.
Yeah.
And
You can't send the message that one player or one team is bigger than the league. You gotta be consistent. And if someone breaks the rules, there has to be punishment for it in order to prevent. It's simple. You got to prevent that from happening again. You got to show people that if you do that, it's wrong, and that the league is not going to put up with it. It blows my mind, really. It really blows my mind. But at least they're struggling so far. They are winning right now, but they are still 3 games under 500. So
right.
it's
So
what it
we'll
is.
see how they wind up. But you know, it's a little bit of karma at its finest, going on this season. So before we wrap it up, I do have to ask you, I know you sent me that picture of Daniel Jones looking pretty big. I
Dude,
mean, I said he's definitely been working out with Saquon because his
he has.
quads look insane right now, and so
Listen, I'm just saying, I don't. Giants could go 0-16 this year. If they're playing their butts off and they're in the weight room doing that stuff and they're really coming together with Joe Judge, that's all I can ask for, man. Because it certainly looks like they really are. They're ready to go. They're really buying Joe Judge's message, and Daniel Jones is looking like he's doing a good job and sort of becoming a leader, I guess you could say. So
right.
I'm really excited. That got me really excited. He added like 15 pounds of muscle. I was like, damn, Daniel Jones. Like,
Yeah, nice. Yeah, because
no one's gonna be throwing him anymore.
he was looking a little lanky,
Yeah,
his
yeah. When
rookie
he came
year.
in, he was skinny. Jamal Adams took the ball from him that one game when they played the Jets. Like, listen, man, all the videos I've seen, he's holding on to the ball with 2 hands every single time he's throwing the ball, and he got bigger. So, oh wait,
Right.
actually, let me ask you. I saw something on Instagram today. Who do you got? I mean, I feel like I already know this answer, but who do you got? Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes in that throwing competition?
It's a tough one, man, because
Yeah, no, it is.
I don't know who's got the stronger arm, to be
Neither
honest.
do I.
They
Neither do
both,
I.
as people said, I think that like their arms are strong in like different situations. Like Mahomes' arm is insane how like he can throw off such unbalanced platforms and still like zing it in there, you know? But like when Josh Allen just steps into a throw and really drives it, I mean, people say that no one throws the ball faster than him. So as far as just launching it distance, I mean, honestly, I mean it's like flip a coin. I mean, seriously, I bet you both these guys can throw a ball 80 plus yards. I mean,
Dude, I saw a video of Allen today on his knee. I'm sure you've seen it before. On his knees, hitting the crossbar. Or no, I don't know if he hit the crossbar, but he threw it 50 yards from
yeah, I
his.
think he hit the crossbar. I think you're right. I've seen that video if I remember
I
correctly.
mean, I mean, I guess I just didn't believe it since of how absurd that is.
Yeah,
I didn't want to believe it, but listen, like I've seen videos. I remember Allen at the combine. I'm sure you remember just flinging it just with ease. Didn't even look like he was in the backyard with his dad, just throwing the ball around.
right.
And I've seen Mahomes during warmups doing the same thing. So I really want them to happen. I really think that they could somehow incorporate charity into it as
Well, you're
well.
right. They. I know Josh Allen got asked about it during his press conference, and he said yes. He said that I believe Mahomes is a charitable organization. The proceeds would probably go to that for sure. If they were to do it, it'd be 100% for charity. Which, of course, I mean, they're in the end of the day, they're two stand-up guys, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you expect nothing less out of them. I mean, I think if I had to put money on it, I think I have to support my quarterback.
Yeah, go for it. I would do the same thing.
But in Vegas, though, I mean, it's pretty much 50-50, really. I mean, they give him the slight edge to Mahomes, which is understandable. I get it. You got to give someone the odds, and you might as well give it to, the league's best quarterback, over
Highest paid player in sports history.
sports history. I get it for sure. But, I mean, listen, it'll be fascinating. I would also love to see, like I said, not just who could throw the ball furthest, can throw the ball like miles per hour, like the hardest. Because I bet you they can throw it. I mean, I'm expecting them to be able to throw it up into the 60s, I think, which is crazy for football,
Yeah, we'll
you know?
see some baseball speeds.
Exactly. So, yeah, but I love it. I think it's great. And, we'll see if they're able to do it with all the, with this pandemic that's going on. But hopefully at some point soon we can see it, because I think that it would also just be something that would just be like a feel good event too. It's
Yeah,
fun for a good cause. It just kind of give people some happiness and hope right now on a time where I think everybody could really use it. So
for
we'll
sure.
see.
All right, well,
So,
I guess that sort of wraps things up. Stay tuned for episode 4 coming soon. We might have a NFL top maybe 50 or maybe 100 if we're really into it list
right.
coming up soon. We got to do that soon. But for Mitchell Broder, I'm Pasquale Tartaro, and we're signing out. Thanks for joining us here on New York State of Mind.